I was going to summer school in Boston, and took the train from Providence to Boston every day, and I was in heaven because I had been working in a factory after high school, a grimy, ugly place, a jewelry shop, big factory, because Providence was the costume jewelry center of the world. So there were a lot of factories, and all these poor kids, you know, most of them spent their life in these factories. Never saw the sun. The windows all sooted over. Oh, it was horrible. So I lasted a year. I said, I can't do this. I hate this. So my brother my oldest brother just got discharged, and he had been in France and Germany and fought. You know, he had a terrible time, but he finally came back, and he enrolled in the law school at Boston University because he had gone to Providence College first. He wanted to be a philosopher. He always was. So he came back, and I spent all of my high school days, because my father was working in the defense plant at night shift. That meant he worked from 10 to 8 in the morning, and we had to bring him his dinner every night, you know. It was a terrible time. My other brother died at 19. He was my closest brother and very tremendous influence on my life. And he's the one that literally brought me to Provincetown, because he came here as a kid. And this guy was a painter. He actually was a beachcomber. His name was Corbridge, Edgar Corbridge. He did some very nice paintings. I think we may have some in the collection.
We have 2.
Yeah, oh good.
Yeah.
And he was a great guy. So he and his wife took my brother, Silvestro, to this place. And my brother was so taken by it that he wrote an essay. And that's how I knew about it, that it was Provincetown. Because after he died, my oldest brother gave me his papers, and I read this essay that he wrote. And it said that Provincetown, a fisher town, a painter's town. And then I didn't think anything of it, you know. And then when I came to Provincetown, I realized that this is what he was talking about, this town, Provincetown. So, I diverged a little bit, but it's important to know that that was the genesis of my coming here. So then I went to summer school, and I met Charlie Cooper, who was 5 years older than me, just like my brother. So he became my surrogate. My mother and father thought of him as my older brother, and he took care of me when I was a kid. And we came to Provincetown together, because he went to summer school at Vesper George like I did. So one day, Mr. Lindegreen, whom I always speak with great reverence and respect, because he was so good to me. He gave me a scholarship for 3 years because we were poor, and he made it possible for me to go to art school. Mr. Lindegreen announced to the student body, about 400 students, that a very important painter was coming and giving a painting demonstration tomorrow. And he's from a place called Cape Cod. Well, it's hard for us to believe that today. Most people didn't even know where Cape Cod was. They always thought the Cape, when you said the Cape, they meant Cape May, you know, the New Jersey Cape, but not this Cape. So he said, yes, he's going to give a painting demonstration. So I said, oh God. Because I was trying to paint, and then my teachers didn't know anything. They were old fogies, you know, they're just trying to draw first and then paint on top and glazing colors and all that. So I was very disappointed until this day that this man came, and here's this guy. He comes, wiry as a willow, with a shock of white hair in front, thin, very Germanic looking. He was German. his background was German, from Chicago, from Illinois. His father was a baker, and Henry Hensche was a child prodigy of Hawthorne's. At 19, he won a national award for draftsmanship, the Pulitzer Prize for drafting. So he knew how to draw. So he gets up there on the stage with his easel and he had a 20 by 24 canvas, and his palette was all set up, and I was down below looking up, and I said, "Oh, who the hell is this guy anyway?" So then first words in his mouth was that the Venetians are the great painters. I listened, wow, talking about Michelangelo, about Monet, about Degas, about Holbein, because that was basically a commercial art school. But after the war, there was such a demand from the veterans returning that these schools, they took these kids in, whatever. They even created schools to get the GI money, because it was big money. You know, a lot of these schools didn't have that kind of funds. So it was to their advantage to do this. So all the schools were full. The school of Lausanne, I was rejected, even though I got the highest score in the drawing of a three-dimensional chair and a figure. But then when it came, because the School of Lausanne had just become a college, because they wanted to get the money from the government. So they introduced academics. And, you know, I spent 3 years of the 4 years of high school in the pool room on Federal Hill. That was my education, you know. So I was not prepared for this, and so I flunked that test. And they wouldn't let me in because there was such a demand. They could be fussy. Even though I had recommendations from John Fraser, Gordon Piers, Gilbert Franklin, high recommendation. No, because I flunked the test. So they could be fussy then, you know. So Henry said to a young girl that was my friend, Marjorie Osborne, who later married young John Worf's son. So he picked Marge out of the student body, and she came up to stage, and she was one of the few serious painters as students. She was very, very good, very talented. So Henry, after he finished talking, he turns around and he whips up a huge blob of color, and then another one on his palette. We're waiting for him to do the drawing, you know, like everybody else did. So he takes it, and then his brushes, the brushes were like this. They were from Bavaria, and he got them from Hawthorne. They were beautiful brushes. That was his most prized possession, his brushes. Nobody could touch them, and he loved them. So he takes a big brush full of color, boom, he hits it on the canvas just like that. Then he takes another brush and another puddle and does the same thing again. And he did this 4 or 5 times, so he had about 5 spots of color, unrelated, on the canvas. Well, I said to my friend next to me, I said, this guy must be a little crazy, maybe. Yeah. So he just kept working and kept working. Then he went around again to these spots, and he worked on them and sort of stopped making them relate to each other. Inside of 2 hours, there was a head in the canvas. And I look at it, I almost had a heart attack. I was so excited that I couldn't contain myself. I said, oh my God, this guy's a magician. Oh, Charlie, where are you? He was sick that day, he didn't come to school. I said, Charlie, this is what we've been talking about. You know, this guy is a real painter. Because all the teachers were commercial artists. So after he finished 4 hours, that poor girl posed without resting. He was ruthless with the models. After 4 hours, and Marge was so excited that she stayed there and kept posing. In 4 hours, here was a beautiful portrait of Marge. I ran up to the stage, because there had 4 or 5 steps to get up to it. I said, Mr. Hensche, I want to study with you. I was 17, turning 18 that August. He said, well, yeah, well, I have a school in the summer. Well, where is it, sir? It's in Cape Cod. And I said to him, stupido, I said, where is Cape Cod? He said, well, if you're really interested, you'll find out. And that was it. So I got home, all excited, called up Charlie right away. He lived in Pawtucket. I said, Charlie, this is it. I found our secret. I found what we're going to study with. This guy came to the school today and did a head in 4 hours. And it's incredible. It's 3-dimensional, it's volumetric, it's beautiful. And it looks like her too, and it's a great likeness. He said, well, Sal, that sounds great. Well, where does he teach? Well, he said he has a summer school in a place called Cape Cod. Now, Charlie had been in the Army, and he was in the Air Force. And he said, well, where is this place? He didn't know where it was either. He said, but let me hang up. I'll go to my encyclopedia, and I'll call you right back. I'll find out where this place is. So about an hour goes by, and he calls me back. He said, gee, Sal, it's far away. It's about 200 miles away from us. I said, oh, my God, how are we going to do that? He said, well, I got an old broken-down Studebaker Commander, 1930s. He used to take 5 gallons of oil at a time. Imagine the trail of smoke we used to leave. But it was a huge car. You know, you got it for $100. You know. So he said, yeah, it's there's a town at the very end. It is called Provincetown. I never heard of it. Have you ever? No, I never heard of Cape Cod or Provincetown. I never have either. But we'll find out, and let's go meet this man and sign up for school. In the middle of winter, we drove from Providence to Provincetown. It took 6 hours. It was that remote. The highway wasn't finished yet, so you had to come through every little town. And I said to Charlie, we're dead and we're in heaven. This is paradise. You know, we lived all our lives in like, they call them ghettos now. They were neighborhoods, we called them. You know, mine was an Italian one. His was mixed, Irish and French and Scottish and stuff in Pawtucket. A lot of French Canadians because they worked in the mills. Those poor kids worked in the mills all their lives. So we finally got here after 6 hours. And then to find the house, well, first we ran out to the dunes with the car, and we did a watercolor. And then we found out where he lived. In those days, there was no highway. So he came from Race Point right up to his house. We knock at the door, and this man comes, said, what do you want? Very unpleasant. He said, aren't you Mr. Hensche? Yes, I am. He said, well, I just saw you do a painting demonstration at Vesper George School of Art, and I and my friend Charlie want to study with you. Well, come on in, it's getting cold. Very unpleasant. So you go up, I said, where are we going? We're going upstairs. I got a little kerosene burner up there. He was very frugal. His wife was English, and she had gone back to England after the war to see her family. She was a governess for a rich family in New York City, but she painted. She started to paint, and she loved to paint. And so then she came to Provincetown to study with Hawthorne. At that time, she wasn't married. Yeah, he invited us in. We go up these catwalk of the stairs, upstairs. It's still pretty cold. The downstairs was freezing because there was no heat. got upstairs, and there was a little bit of heat, but it was not enough, you know. So he says, "Right over there." We sat there. Then he started talking, and he talked. It was 12 o'clock, and he talked till midnight, right around the clock. Never gave us a cup of coffee, never gave us a glass of water, nothing. Because his wife wasn't there. She would have done it, I'm sure. But he was an unusual guy. So he said, "Well, you guys, if you want to sleep, you can sleep on these benches here." He had two benches upstairs. So we slept on the benches. And we got up in the morning, and we said goodbye. He never gave us breakfast, nothing. No coffee, nothing. And so we left there like in a state of, you know, shock, excitement, and wonderment. What the hell are we going to do? This guy looks like he's nuts. And Charlie took my word for it because he wasn't there. But when he saw his paintings and when he talked about painting, Charlie realized, yeah, Sally's right. This guy is good teacher. And he talked about Mr. Hawthorne, always Mr. Hawthorne, not Charles Hawthorne, Mr. Hawthorne. Great respect, you know. And he told us stories about Hawthorne, and he knew art history very well, and it was tremendously enlightening to us.